x-axis we have morale, so team morale. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. Time sort of marches on along the x-axis, and we have this dreaded or maybe enlightened give up line. Like if we dip below that, that's when we sort of just say, screw it, like we're done, we've given up. So this is sort of the point of reference for this failure story. So I will start at the beginning. Actually I'll say our morale is sort of midline. In 2012 to 2014, we had funding from the Gates Foundation and Stone Family Foundation to scale up what we refer to as sanitation marketing. And what does that mean? That means that we were taking direct management of sales agents and equipping them with a highly designed sales strategy and sales marketing skills to sell toilets. And those toilets were being manufactured and delivered by a network of latrine producers who are just basically rural construction workers, concrete masons, etc. And this program was wildly successful. Between the years 2012 to 2014, we moved the needle on sanitation coverage in rural Cambodia from 27% to about 40%. Sanitation is like herd vaccination. Like the more people shitting in a toilet, the better. You want everybody to use a toilet, but at the beginning, you just want more people. Because like, yes, it's great if I'm using a toilet, but it's actually like way better if everybody here is using a toilet and I can still like defecate outside. It's actually like the more people around you, the better. So in the beginning, we sold a lot of toilets. We sold around 140,000 latrines, which hit all of our stretch goals. We got these incentive payments by Gates because they do that type of thing and we love them for it. They gave us extra money and we did really well. And it was attracting the attention of policymakers, donors, researchers. Like how is it that in rural Cambodia, people are buying toilets? And ultimately we said that, well, they're well designed, they're affordable, they're aspirational, and sales agents are selling them and it's an easy process. So people were doing it. So within the beginning, the first phase, we did something that we refer to as the bidding game. This was money from Gates Foundation as part of our scale-up funding to do a randomized Becker-DeGroot bidding game to test what the willingness to pay was for toilets. This was with actual customers, and ultimately what we found is we estimated a demand curve so that we could get our market price right, and we ended up replicating that study to test what would be the demand for toilets when we actually offer financing. So the sales agent goes and like knocks on the door and says, hey, do you want a toilet? Here's all the reasons why, it's really important. And you can also get a loan. And the household says, yes, I would love to get a toilet with a loan. And what we found in this piece of research was there was a 400% increase in adoption at market price so long as a loan was offered at the point of sale. So we had the evidence. Oh, glory, we had the evidence, we knew what we needed to do. And it was going to be game-changing. 400% increase is a huge amount. And so we decided to scale up. So we sold a lot of toilets, we moved the needle on coverage. Most of the people that were buying were cash-only purchasers. They had the cash, they bought the toilet. But we knew after selling about 140,000 toilets that we were moving into more difficult segments of the market. If you think about the technology adoption curve, we're kind of moving further and further. And so we entered the scale-up. Team morale was so high. Like the stoke was real high. We had money, we had partners, we had the evidence, we had the research, we had all of it. We had the people, and we knew we needed to make a few tweaks. The main tweak was that we had to separate the sales agents from the suppliers. In this beginning, the sales agents were kind of managed by the suppliers. But it turns out like a rural construction worker doesn't like to manage a sales force. They don't really do a good job at it, and they're not that interested in it. So we knew we needed to take more management of the sales team and make the suppliers really efficient. And that required investing in an information system to allow us to do that, which I'll talk about in a second. The second main change was that we needed to scale up financing. We had the evidence. It was going to be 400% increase. So we began forming partnerships and getting things in place to scale up sanitation financing. along these lines, we invested in what we call the load balancing system. This was a custom kind of application that was built on Salesforce.com, which most of you probably use for like a CRM. We use it for operational tools like management information systems. And what that did is it allowed a sales agent in rural Cambodia, like over here, knocking on a door, placing an order, you buy a latrine, I enter it into a device, it gets synced up to Salesforce, and a supplier way over there can now produce that toilet and install it at his house. And that's all happening in the cloud, and it's happening dynamically. The reason why it had to happen in kind of using cloud-based technologies is that we're talking hundreds of thousands of toilets, so we can't pass paper around very efficiently in that case. But the reason I mention it in our fail story is this was the main database with which all of our insights and evidence and kind of analysis is based. So we now have visibility on every toilet being sold, how long it takes to process, how long it takes to deliver, how long it takes for a loan application to be completed, etc. So this served as our main information system to do all this research. So we're in scale-up phase. We're super excited. Team morale is real high. We have funding, we have a pipeline, we have people. And then we enter what I refer to as the slog. This is this kind of long period between 2016 and 2017 where we start learning why ultimately IDE will not succeed at scaling up sanitation financing in rural Cambodia. And we learned a lot of things along the way, of which I'll just briefly chat about 4, I guess. First, we had the partner, right? We all love to have the perfect partner, and we had a great partner. In the last session, I named the partners that we were working with all along, and it turned out that they were like in the room, and it kind of got a little strange. So I was gently recommended that I shouldn't do that this time. And it wasn't like placing blame. We're all in this together. We're partners, right? Like we're all trying to figure this out. But we had the perfect partner. And in their head office in Phnom Penh, they said, yes, sanitation financing, this is going to be competitive, this is going to be lucrative, this is going to be a significant part of our portfolio. And the people in Phnom Penh were excited. Their morale was high. But ultimately what we learned is that every branch manager ultimately is managing their own portfolio. They have their own P&L. They're assessing their own risk. They have their own prerogatives. They have their own people. They have their own teams. And there was a huge disconnect between the Phnom Penh level of excitement and willingness and desire and the branch manager's willingness to invest in sanitation financing. So there was some partner issues. We ultimately extended to other partners over the course of this 2-year period, but in general the findings were kind of the same. Like there wasn't much of an appetite on behalf of the MFIs to do sanitation financing loans. Second, sales agents. Oh gosh. Sales agents. In the beginning, over here, sales agents were just selling toilets. They were like selling simple below ground toilets. It was easy to have a succinct message. They can deliver it consistently. They can do it well. But when you start talking about loans and financing and how they repay and answering questions, your sales agents have to be a lot more educated. They have to be a lot more nuanced. They have to be able to answer questions on the fly. And ultimately, we had a pretty high attrition rate of sales agents. They were strictly commission-based. And so we learned that ultimately we needed to keep them a little bit longer if they were going to be doing complex financing discussions with households. Also, we learned it's a different skill set. It's different to sell an aspirational product than it is to talk about the terms of financing. I think we all know that, but it's worth mentioning again. So that was an issue. That was something we learned and we struggled through. We ultimately made some adjustments where sales agents became partially salaried so we could keep them a little bit longer. But that was a huge set of learnings. Lastly, loan processing times. We learned that it takes a long time when there's not interest on behalf of the MFIs to process a loan. The MOU was very direct, and it said 7 days. The application will be received, and it will be confirmed or denied. what we found, because we had information on all of this in our load balancing system, loan applications were taking on average 37 days. We also learned that with every day of waiting, there was a 2% increase in cancellation rates for toilets. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of toilets, so that's a lot. So ultimately we realized that there just was this slow processing, which was indicative of just a lack of appetite and interest, and also just kind of a complex system. You're bringing in multiple partners and sales, etc. But that really had a significant effect, and we had visibility on it because we had information in this system. Lastly, another kind of little pivot point we made during the slog. So keep in mind, like, our team morale is kind of like dropping, you know? Well, what if we try selling shelters? Because then the value of the loan will go from $60-ish to like $260. And then surely MFIs will love it. So we tried to bundle. We did a whole bundling pilot that was quite rigorous. And what we learned was that it still wasn't really that interesting. These are non-income generating loans. There's a low appetite for them when push comes to shove. And what we found out, and what we now, hindsight is 2020, is that a lot of things were happening outside of ID's control that were also affecting the MFI's willingness to give sanitation loans. Of which, we have the infamous, in May of 2016, Blacklisted Communities. So, again, another knock on the morale here. Morale is going down. In May of 2016, I started getting emails saying, MFIs are starting to blacklist entire villages because one or two households is deferring. And so what would happen is a simple to operationalize way of mitigating risk was that if a household deferred, they would just say, nope, this whole room, none of you can get loans anymore. Really sorry about it, but good luck, and move on. So we had thousands of households that were now just straight up blacklisted. And that's the term they used. It was like pretty intense. But at that point, it's like, uh-oh, like now we have people that just straight can't get loans, even if we had more rigorous ways of assessing risk or willingness to repay. Also, during this whole time, so from 2012 to 2016, 2017, other loan products were hitting the market. Rural Cambodians were becoming incredibly over-indebted. On average, the average rural Cambodian has over $900 of debt burden, spanning on average 2 to 3 loan products, which are for agriculture, income generation, housing, and so you have this pervasive over-indebtedness happening in rural Cambodia. So much so that, who works in, does anybody here work in Cambodia? You do, okay. Do you remember in April of 2017 when MFIs became regulated? So in April of 2017, the government stepped in and said, sorry, you have to cap your interest rates at 17%. And MFIs were already assessing this as, this is quite risky, and their kind of main leverage point is interest rates. People in this room know way more about this than I do, but ultimately the government stepped in, and it was hugely disruptive. People kind of sent shockwaves through the MFI sector, through the nonprofits who were relying on financing. And so that was happening outside of ID's control. So we're really close to the give up line at this point. I'm kind of running out of space. I don't want to say we're below it yet. We ultimately fell below the give up line during what we refer to as the Great Awakening. And we have the little emoji like hallelujah hands. What happened during the Great Awakening was everybody was in the same room on National Sanitation Day in November of 2017. National Sanitation Day is in Cambodia. And one of the nonprofits that's working in financing, sanitation financing, stood up behind the podium and said, we're being really successful. We're succeeding at giving sanitation loans. We've had huge success. And everybody in the room, we're talking policymakers, nonprofits, MFIs, everybody working in sanitation, everybody in the room started like groveling and saying like, there's no way you've been successful, we don't believe it. And it kind of became this meeting of the minds where people kind of reached consensus. The sanitation financing might not work, at least in the context with which we were all trying, which was smaller loan sizes. And yeah, so we had this moment where we allowed ourselves to give up, which that's kind of the, I don't know, what's the opposite of the climax of the story? Is like maybe it's the climax of the story, but it's the lowest part. Yeah, so that's like where we like realized, okay, IDE, we're okay not doing this anymore. And so, but we realized what's happening during this whole time period. Although our morale is going down, our sales continued to go up. We sold an additional 120,000 latrines over this period. We moved the needle from 29% here to 40% here. And by November 2017, we were in the like high 50s, 59%, 62% level of coverage. So we're still selling toilets. People are still buying with cash, but we know that the last segment of the market, the 33% remaining, are low-income households, they're impoverished, they live in challenging environments, and so we knew we had to have something. So we started to test this thing called targeted subsidies. Now this is Fail Fest, so it's not humble brag fest where I start telling you how hugely successful we are, but I was told to like mention a few things that we're doing now. So we started thinking that, okay, sanitation financing has been a drag. It's sucked time and energy and resources and people and morale. But what if we offered targeted subsidies that we took direct control over the implementation of and that we delivered at the point of sale? And when I say targeted subsidies, like that's like crazy jargon for just saying we gave people a coupon, basically. Like we gave people a coupon, and what we found, I designed or with Keith, who's in the back drinking coffee out of the mug, we designed an RCT to test what the effectiveness of offering targeted subsidies at the point of sale, what the effect would be for poor households, as indicated by their ID card, which in Cambodia we have this thing called ID Poor 1, ID Poor 2. You can basically see how poor people are based on their license, which is crazy, but that's what's there. But at the point of sale, they were offered a coupon. And what we found in this RCT was that households that were poor had 14 to 17% more uptake. And that households that were non-poor, there's no distortionary effect on that. Same sales, same coverage, same adoption, no change in perception of subsidy. And so we had we had the evidence here, and then we also now have another piece of evidence that we're quite excited about. And so we call this the RCT. And with this piece of evidence, we now have kind of validation that targeted subsidies is something that's possible. With this piece of evidence, we've also contributed to the national dialogue around subsidies, where the government is no longer letting people give subsidy until that village hits a threshold of 70% coverage. So the government has started to pick up this evidence that's happening, being generated by IDE, being generated by SNB, East Meets West, Thrive. We've all kind of published papers around subsidy in Cambodia. The other important distinction and why I focus on the two pieces of evidence is this piece of evidence was highly rigorous with extremely high levels of internal validity. We took control over every aspect of offering sanitation financing in the bidding game. It was a petri dish environment, and we wanted to get accurate estimates around how effective it would be. Ultimately, when we tried to take the findings from the petri dish environment and move them out into the real world, we could never make it work. So here in this RCT, the thing that we tested was the operational model that we wanted to scale. And we knew that it was something that we could operationally feasibly do at scale across the 7 provinces. So now, we're in this new phase, starting last month. It's a bit arbitrary, but it's called the pivot. And at this point, we have a new round of funding from the government of Australia. We're trying to get the job done in Cambodia, so get the coverage level up to 88%. And we're scaling targeted subsidies. And we're also creating an installment plan that the latrine suppliers can offer. And we ultimately insure the supplier if there's a default on those installment payments. So with those two financing options, while also having the cash-only option, We believe that we can hit that 88%. We can sell an additional 200-ish thousand latrines, and hopefully we can get a lot more people shitting in a toilet than out in a field and make people happy. And that is my failure. So thank you very much.